Welcome into Los Angeles, California, and Writer's Block. I'm Bill Reiter. We're just a couple days away from the official start of NBA free agency, so we're going to give you an NBA free agency edition of the program. We'll have Todd Furman, our Vegas insider, with his own odds on where some of the biggest names will go starting this weekend. Reed Forgrave will swing by to give his perspective, and I'm going to make some bold predictions starting right now. As we will continue to do here on CBS Sports HQ, we've given you every bit of news and the analysis behind it as we've gotten information on what we think is going to happen on Sunday in free agency. But now, with things just a couple days away, we're going to use this opportunity, this space, to make some predictions. 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific, players can begin actually signing on the dotted lines. And here are my predictions for some of the biggest names, what they're going to do. I'm going to give you what I think is going to happen, and I'm going to give you what I want to happen. Kawhi Leonard is the biggest prize in this free agency class. He's also the biggest mystery. As I've said many times here on CBS Sports HQ, I am guessing, everybody is guessing. I actually think he's going to be a Los Angeles Clipper. My gut tells me, and again, most of the time when I'm talking to you about what I think is going to happen in the NBA, it is based on reporting and perspective gleaned from sources around the league. It's just not true here. I don't know because no one that I talk to has any idea. But it feels like the opportunity to come home, to have a team he can be a part of for a long time, to take that max money with the injuries he's seen, it just to me feels like the Clippers. Now, I want it to be the Raptors. I would love it to be Toronto to roll it back for a 1+1 or a max deal to give those folks up north another opportunity to keep making these runs. And certainly Toronto would be a very good team this upcoming season, but they're not young outside of Pascal Siakam. They're not going to be able to keep that core together forever. Part of me just thinks it's going to be the Clippers. I guess we'll see on Sunday. The other big name outside of Kawhi, maybe would have been the bigger name if he hadn't gotten hurt, is Kevin Durant. We know that the ruptured Achilles will sideline him this upcoming season, almost certainly the entirety of not just the regular season, but the postseason. A year from now, I think it's going to be the New York Knicks, like Nets, excuse me. I think that Brooklyn's going to be the teams that land him. It's a better fit. Kyrie wants to be there if KD is there. And again, talking to folks around the NBA, they'll tell you two things. One, KD can change his mind. And two, he's going to be somewhere in New York, and that makes the most sense. I actually want it to be the Knicks, though. What I want is for the New York Knicks and Kevin Durant to get together to answer two questions. Can a James Dolan-owned team be a real contender despite the fact that it's run by James Dolan? And as great as Kevin Durant is, and as much as he thinks that sometimes he doesn't get the credit he deserves, is he actually great enough, and he'd be with Kyrie Irving, to take the most difficult to win with organization, maybe in professional sports, certainly in the NBA, and turn them into champions? I want to see the failure at the Garden because it would be epic, or the success at the Garden because it would be epic too. Either way, that theater would be pretty amazing. I also just want these press conferences with a petulant Kevin Durant, this is from earlier in the regular season, to just come to an end.
I have nothing to do with the Knicks. I don't know who traded Porzingis. They got nothing to do with me. I'm trying to play basketball. Y'all come here every day, ask me about free agency, ask my teammates, my coaches. You rile up the fans about it. Y'all let us play basketball. That's all I'm saying.
I got nothing to do with the Knicks unless I sign with the New York Knicks, and Kyrie goes too because we created the space, or they did when they shipped out Kristaps Porzingis. I guess we'll see. Kyrie Irving, I think it's going to be Brooklyn. It feels like a Kyrie-Kevin Durant pairing makes sense. Where I actually want him to go is Siberia for a year, at least, to just, study whether the earth is round or flat. I'm serious. I'm tired of this guy. I'm over this dude, and this isn't a secret anymore, but you talk to folks around the NBA, and certainly people in Boston, he was an insufferable teammate with the Celtics. He chose to force his way out of Cleveland. I'm over the guy, and as much as his talent is overwhelming, and a lot of colleagues here at CBS Sports HQ understandably think he'd be a great fit in a lot of places, I don't agree. If I'm a team, I don't want that drama and that head case in my locker room. Jimmy Butler's another guy that's interesting. He's certainly a max player. He's a great performer. He's a closer and a clutch player. He's also difficult in the locker room, and that is an A-type in the extreme. I actually think it's going to be the Sixers, in large part because I think Kawhi is going to be a Clipper. I think that is going to incentivize Philly to just bring everybody back, to max everybody that they can, to overpay Tobias Harris and JJ Redick, to go into that tax as much as they need to, and to convince Jimmy Butler, look, dude, you'll be the man. It's your world. Let's roll it back and go for a championship. I want it to be Houston. And sort of selfishly, the reason I want it to be the Rockets, I just want to see the drama that would be Chris Paul and Jimmy Butler in a locker room together. And I think there's two outcomes that make sense. That team is good enough to certainly make a run in the Western Conference. Jimmy Butler is a perimeter defender, and improving that defense is huge for what they need. Even though on the offensive end, I don't know how that fits or how that works. I mean, we know Harden's usage rate is huge, and we know that CP3 had a problem with how much Harden had the ball in his hands. Believe me, that becomes an even more problematic scenario with Jimmy Butler. But it could work. And if it doesn't work, the drama will be WWE-style silliness. And so either way, I'm a fan. Klay Thompson, this one's easy. We had some breaking news earlier. I guess you can call it breaking news. Adrian Wojnarowski put it out there. This is something everyone knew. I think it's going to be the Warriors. I want it to be the Warriors. I know it's going to be the Warriors. As I said earlier here on the show, unless GM Bob Myers and that organization gets a case of the real stupids very, very quickly, they're going to offer Klay the max deal the moment they can, because Klay has sent out, 4 trial balloons his agent has over the last 2 months. Max him from moment one he signs. Don't max him. We're looking at the teams in LA. It's that simple. The Warriors aren't idiots. Klay Thompson will be a Warrior. And I like that. I like the idea of Klay for the entirety of his career being with the organization that drafted him. D'Lo's interesting. D'Angelo Russell's an interesting guy here. He has certainly redeemed his stock in the NBA. He's a guy who got shipped out, as we know, from Los Angeles. I actually think it's going to be the Los Angeles Lakers, and I think that's going to be a mistake. I don't think Kawhi is going to be a Laker. I don't think Kemba or Kyrie are going to sign up to play with LeBron. I actually, with D'Lo, think the Lakers will go for that young man. I don't think it'll be the right call. I want to see him. This is a little far afield, although there's some folks in the NBA who think it's a good fit. I want to see him with the T-Wolves. I want to see him in Minnesota. He is really good friends with Karl Anthony Towns. And I think, and I could be wrong because Wiggins is such an interesting, overpaid, athletic, non-superstar, I think that team would be really good and really interesting, and maybe, just maybe, D'Lo and Cat together bring out the best in each other because they like each other, and that is a squad that finally lives up to some of the potential we've seen for a really long time. Now, on the Lakers thing, it's not just the Lakers who might turn to him as the backup to the backup to the backup plan. D'Lo, back in the day, not that long ago, when he gave his starting 5, certainly inadvertently pointed to why today's Lakers team is constructed. Makes a lot of sense.
4 guys alongside you on the court. So you're starting 5, but you aren't in it.
I'd say Bill Russell, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and me.
I mean, that's a pretty good all-time team. Let's roll through a few others really quickly. Al Horford's a guy that's going to get $22.5 million per year. I want him to be a Clipper because I want Kawhi to be there. I think if Horford teams up with Kawhi and that Clippers team, you have this parity still with a lot of great NBA teams around the country that make this league even more interesting than it's been the last few years. And we've known what the Warriors are. Kawhi and Horford with the Clippers against LeBron and AD. I love the drama here in my backyard. I think it might be the Mavs. It feels like Dallas is going to go out and get somebody. They're going to land someone. They're not afraid to overpay. There is no state income tax, which goes a lot further for guys at that income level. It's just my gut tells me it's going to be Dallas. Patrick, I want to throw a few random names before we get to Todd Furman. Patrick Beverley, I love this guy. He gets in people's heads. He's obviously a defensive specialist. I think it's going to be the highest bidder. Literally, you want to give him $14 million a year for 3 years? He's yours. I want it to be the Los Angeles Lakers. And I've said this on HQ throughout the week. I don't want, outside of Kawhi Leonard, for the Lakers to go max someone. I want them to bring in guys like Patrick Beverley, like Danny Green, JJ Redick might be too much money, but I want some depth around that team, in part because I think that's an NBA champion, and in part because there's going to be high-level guys over the next couple of years, including Ben Simmons, the Lakers can get, and then they stagger their superstars by age. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And I just said Danny Green very quickly. Think he's going to stay with the Raptors, especially if I'm wrong and Kawhi Leonard stays there. I want him to be a Laker, as I just said. I love NBA free agency, so we're on the record. We can keep score. I'm going to bet on some of these, so we'll know on Monday whether I'm in the hole a little bit or doing well. We're also going to get a perspective, speaking of gambling, from Todd Furman. He's our Vegas insider, and he put together his own odds on these guys I just talked to you about and where he thinks they're going to go from a gambling perspective. We'll do that on Writer's Block here in Los Angeles, California in just a minute. I was so excited about Todd Furman, I lied to you. He's actually up in 10 minutes right now. We have another guy that's awesome, Reid Forgrave, my colleague here, NBA insider extraordinaire at CBS Sports HQ. Reid, let's get right into it. I just did some predictions for these guys versus where I think they're going to go. I want to get the same thing for you. Where do you think, I know it's a guess, Kawhi Leonard's going, and where do you want him to end up?
I think Kawhi is going to stay in Toronto, and I want him to stay in Toronto for a 1+1 type deal. Look, was he planning to do that the moment that he was shipped there last summer? No, obviously not. He wanted to be in Southern California. He's a Southern California kid. He likes to surf. He likes to fish. He likes the Southern California life. That's where his family is. But the Raptors just put on the single best one-year free agency pitch in the history of the NBA. How can you not run it back one more time?
Reid Forgrave, we know the Lakers have created max space, and we know their history is go get the biggest name that you can land. Who do you think they can actually get with a max deal if that's the route Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss want to go?
I think Kawhi is not a realistic possibility, but I think Kyrie Irving really is. I know we all think Kyrie is going to Brooklyn. Those are all the signals that he has sent out. But I also think it's not a coincidence that Kyrie had that kiss and make up with LeBron several months ago. Those things don't just happen out of nowhere. Kyrie realized this season that he can't be the number one guy on a championship level team. I think that was an eye-opening experience to him. We all know he can be the second best player on a team that wins the title. That's what happened in 2016. So he certainly can be the third best player on a team that can win the title. This would be a fascinating team. It would have absolutely zero depth. You'd have so many minimum contracts, but I know that I'd love to see that happen.
Reid Forgrave, if Boardman gets paid with the Clippers and not the Raptors, that's where Kawhi ends up. Is there another max guy, because they'll have the room to pay somebody, is there another max guy or just a guy that's going to command $20 or $25 million that you think would be a good fit that might end up with the Clippers?
I mean, I think it would be fascinating if Tobias Harris decided to come back and Clippers pulled the ultimate fleece job on the Philadelphia 76ers. I think a more realistic one would be Jimmy Butler. I don't know how the Kawhi-Jimmy fit would exactly work. Obviously, two stellar defenders. But I do think the locker room dynamic would play really well for Jimmy Butler. Kawhi is an absolute bulldog, absolute alpha dog on the court. He's not that in the locker room. He's just a guy who goes along and gets along. Jimmy Butler, obviously, is the alpha dog in every locker room he's ever been in. So I think this might fit in a personality-wise and in a basketball sense, because I do think these guys, Jimmy appreciates guys who work their tail off. Kawhi is a guy who works their tail off. So I think those two would fit pretty well.
Reid, last one for you. We've heard a lot about the Mavericks targeting Kemba Walker, maybe not the favorites, targeting Al Horford. We don't really have a sense of where Horford's going to go. He'll have a lot of suitors. If the Mavs can land one or two of those guys, what can they be next year in a very, very, very difficult Western Conference?
I mean, a top-tier team. I think the Mavericks all of a sudden are one of those sort of dark horse teams in free agency where, Mark Cuban not afraid to be bold. And don't forget, they have a player who I think is one of the most underrated role players in the NBA who's a free agent this season, which is Maxi Kleber. It's going to be interesting to see if they retain him. That guy, plus Al Horford, plus Kemba Walker, plus whomever else they could get on a max or near max deal. I think that's a team that would be a contender for the next 3 years. I think Luka Doncic is a guy who's an absolute star in this league, who will be an MVP candidate sooner instead of later. I get that he's young. I get that Kristaps is young and is potentially injury prone, but the ceiling of that team is probably best team in the West.
All right, good stuff by Reid Forgrave. Reid, appreciate you. Reid and I will be on together on Sunday for some draft coverage here on CBS Sports HQ. And we go from one great guest, and that gentleman right there, Mr. Forgrave, to Todd Furman, our Vegas insider. We'll visit with Todd his own odds. He used to be the bookmaker at Caesars, and now he's going to put together some odds just for you, just for me, on some of these names we just talked about for NBA free agency. We will get those, unveil those, and Todd will tell you what he's thinking when we come back to the show here in just a minute. All right, welcome back into the program. Reiter's Block here on CBS Sports HQ. I'm Bill Reiter. Before we sign off for the weekend, we got to go to the greatest city on the face of this beautiful earth, Las Vegas, Nevada, to talk to Todd Furman, our guy, the man behind the Bet the Board podcast. You see him everywhere, including here on CBS Sports HQ. Mr. Furman, how goes life in Sin City?
Things are busy, Billy, and as we get closer to the weekend, we know it's one of the most exciting times of year. For me, as an NHL fan, I want to see free agency, but I know you're waiting with bated breath to see how the pecking order and hierarchy is going to play out this weekend in the National Basketball Association.
I'm very excited, and you always give us an edge, but now that edge is going to be extended to you've actually made us your own odds on some of the principal free agents who are going to dictate the direction of next year's NBA season. I'm just going to go one at a time through the odds you made us, Todd, and just get your take and your perspective. That's cool. Let's start with the biggest prize in this free agency class, particularly with Kevin Durant's injury. Kawhi Leonard. You've got the Raptors as the favorites at minus 125. Clippers plus 225. You have the Lakers at plus 225 as well. Knicks 20-1. Nets 25-1. What went into this? In your own bets, anything you see as maybe where I should be leaning?
So for me, I actually dropped the Raptors odds down. I had them as overwhelming favorites to retain the services of Kawhi Leonard, knowing that Masai Ujiri had spurned the offer from the Washington Wizards. But it's hard to ignore what the Lakers have done to clear out $32 million in cap space. Do I think Kawhi is a perfect fit there in Tinseltown with the purple and gold? Absolutely not, but you have to respect the moves they're making. I think the Clippers, though, have an equal shot and just haven't been able to really get the sense that Kawhi wants to 100% be in Toronto. So how to adjust those numbers, change the probabilities a bit. I do ultimately think he signs a one-year deal and commits to making Toronto back-to-back NBA champion.
All right, the next biggest prize for a lot of teams, especially those that have the patience to understand that next year is going to be a wash. It's going to be sunken money. It'll be an investment. Is Kevin Durant. We've got him on a scooter with his boot riding around New York City. He's hanging out with Charles Oakley in New York City. He's bought a place in New York City, and lo and behold, you have the Nets plus 100. Those incredibly well-run, that's sarcasm, Knicks at plus 125, Warriors 4-1, and then you have the field at plus 800. What are you thinking here?
Well, what's crazy about this, I spoke to some odds makers both in town and offshore, and one of my guys, Dave Mason from Bet Online, tells me, hey, look, we took money on teams not named the Nets when they hung a market. So for me to try and adjust these odds personally, I originally had the Nets as a heavy favorite here, brought them down a little bit amid reports that, hey, maybe they aren't clearly the front runner. But Bill, you and I know as well as anybody else that I probably should have kept the Nets there, because if KD's hanging out with Charles Oakley, there's no shot the Dolan family wants to bring him in as a member of the Knicks. So that's why the Nets remain an even money favorite here. I think those two are the front runners. I would be surprised if he goes back to Golden State. And of course, you got to throw the field in the mix if there should be another suitor to emerge. He's going to end up in Gotham City. It's just a question if he's playing in Brooklyn or he's playing in Manhattan.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure that for Knicks fans, you feel real optimistic that Oak's pitch is go there, give your blood, sweat, tears, toil away. You can be forcibly removed and humiliated after you've retired. It'll be a really nice journey. How about Kyrie Irving, Nets minus 175. The Lakers, pretty nice odds. Then you got the field at 4-1.
I think the Nets have clearly emerged as the front runner to get Kyrie's services. Now, this number would have been higher before the Lakers were able to carve out cap space. And so much of these free agent odds, Bill, one domino falls, everything else subsequently moves into place. So I think Kyrie is destined to be a member of the Nets. It's a question of who else will join him, but it won't be without the Lakers' best efforts to try and make him the third head of that three-headed monster alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I just think that Kyrie had Brooklyn in mind the whole way, and that's ultimately where he's going to be able to land, having left Boston.
Kemba, we think, is going to be a Celtic. Those are the reports. Your numbers reflect that. I love your Jimmy Butler lines. You've got the Rockets as the favorites. You have the Sixers up next. The Lakers are at plus 800. And I know, talking to Lakers sources, he is not their first, second, or third target, but he is a guy they'll go after if they swing and they miss on some of those other guys. What are you thinking as you try to figure out where Jimmy Butler's going to be next season?
Well, the craziest part about this for me, Bill, is I look at the composition of the Rockets roster, and I think Jimmy Butler would be a terrible fit there. I can't imagine he would see eye to eye with a veteran in Chris Paul. I'm not quite sure he would love James Harden's laissez-faire attempts to lackluster defense, but the Rockets seem to be all in, offering pretty much everything on their roster, from Clint Capella to PJ Tucker, I mean, you name it, everyone has been made available by GM Daryl Morey. And if it's a sign and trade deal, well, it doesn't make sense from an X's and O's standpoint. I can't ignore all the sound and the noise that's out there. The Rockets are the favorite to get Jimmy Butler to play his first game next season, although I think Philadelphia would be foolish given everything they gave up to acquire him last season.
Yeah, I mean, bonus if that happens, Dana White can eye an eventual Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler UFC cage match when both those guys have retired to continue whatever drama is inevitably going to take place in that locker room. I'm with you, dude. I don't see that fit. All right, Klay Thompson is going to be a Warrior. I want to ask you about Al Horford. He's a really interesting piece. There's a lot of moving parts, according to reports, that could dictate where he goes. Where are you looking? What are you thinking as you try to figure out where that very talented big man might be?
And for me, this, of all the free agents we've discussed, was hands down the hardest to try and pencil him in, not only from a basketball fit standpoint, but to who would want to try and pay him the contract money that he's looking for. I really believed he was going to stay in Boston, but clearly that relationship soured. So when you look at some of the numbers there, I kind of made the Mavericks and Clippers co-favorites, but at a very generous 5-2 price. If he wants to win now, he can add some toughness and some interior scoring to the Clippers roster. The Mavericks clearly need some veteran leadership to kind of build around. I put the Lakers and 76ers kind of in that same vein, in that 4-1, 4.5-1. I'm not sure from a basketball standpoint he's a great fit in either spot, but I can't ignore some of the reports that are out there. I think the Atlanta Hawks, given Horford being a veteran leader for a very young roster, knowing he's got ties to this franchise, that's where he's holding meetings, had to be included as well at 6-1. And then I threw the Pacers up there at 12-1. I think they're going to come away with some prize in this free agency market. I'm just not sure who. And you had to include the Celtics by default at 15-1, but I probably could have added another 0. I can't see Al Horford returning to Beantown.
Yeah, that's me probably just setting my money on fire. Todd Furman, we love the tailor-made odds. Great stuff, buddy. Let's do it again next week.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right, Todd Furman's the best, and that's all we got. We are done for the weekend. They'll all be on the network giving you the updates and the latest news as free agency becomes official. We've got a couple shows on Sunday. Keep it here the entire way through between now and deadline day and beyond for what it means and what is happening, sports fans. Sports Lines in 30 minutes. They're taking over down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for being here. I'm Bill Reiter. See you on Monday.